Hello friends and welcome to Intense Thought. In today's video, this will be the second part of the WD Gann Explained Deep Dive. So if you are just joining for this video and have not watched the previous video, the concepts will make much more sense if you go back and watch the previous video. But this will seek to add some clarity and tie together some of the concepts and questions that were raised from the previous video. So let's look at a question. This question here regarding the cycles of the tunnel through the air. WD Gann, and I have said this in previous videos, WD Gann was not showing you the efficient way to trade. He was showing you the worst possible way to trade. So I'll give you a visualization. The individual cycles in the tunnel through the air and all of the burdensome work that you have to go through to convert them to astrological or astronomical positions, degrees, etc., they are like the straw in this bale of hay. But you don't need to know every detail about every straw in this bale of hay. You need to know how to own the field that grows the grass, how to get the machine that cuts the hay. And so in this case, analyzing the straws is going to be very frustrating. So the answer to the tunnel through the air is that you don't need to know what the cycles are. And putting too much time into it is really a waste of time. The cycles are the planets. That's the spoiler. They're the planets. You will find that it is a combination of the planets are the cycles. So Venus may be the Saint Marie, but whether it's the Mars, whether Saint Marie is Mars or whether Saint Marie is Venus, and it might be Venus, but if the Saint Marie here in this usage is Venus, use Venus. If Marie, the angel of mercy, is Mars and Mercury from a conjunction point progressed into the future along a certain structure, then use that. If the Tokyo J1 is Jupiter and Saturn right now on the September 16th are in a square, well then you know something about the cycle. But I have said in previous videos that what you want to do is you want to look at J.M. Hurst, because J.M. Hurst is a key and a core concept to apply what WD Gann teaches. J.M. Hurst is a much better place to start if you're trying to learn WD Gann, because if you do not know how the cycles work, and I'll show you here, which cycle is which? Well, call them whatever you want, but each of these cycles has relevance, regardless of their name. So if the smallest cycles are your, let's say you're trading, I think Jonas asked the question in a previous video about the day trading, you would be using the ascendant. The ascendant and the midheaven, the progression of the ascendant and the midheaven would give you fast movement on the intraday basis. The moon would be a next smallest one. Then you'd have Mercury, then you'd have Venus, then you'd have Mars, then you might have Jupiter and Saturn, and of course there are other cycles. This is not showing all of them. But the concept is that these little cycles are pluses and minuses and zeros. See, at the top, it's a zero. It's a zero. It's a zero. When it's rising up, it's a plus, and when it's falling, it's providing negative motion. But until you understand the mathematics of how these cycles actually work and add together, the WD Gann concepts are less valuable, because you need to know this stuff. So a great starting point is The Profit Magic of the Stock Market. It's a book by J.M. Hurst. It's out of print. If you try to find the print copy, it's hundreds of dollars. But you can find stuff like this online, or you can sign up to like a Scribd or some type of Goodread thing or whatever. There's all kind of places that give you free trials where you can get documents. So the most useful starting point is The Profit Magic of Stock Transaction Timing. It's a shorter book, and it will tell you about these cycles, okay? And then if you want a deep dive into how to use the future line of demarcation, as I show, or how to calculate how the cycles push up and down, you would be looking for the Cycletic Cycles course, which is 1,200 pages. It is long, although a lot of it is duplication, so it's like there was an audio and a written part, so it might actually be only 600 pages because it duplicates itself. So, which you would understand if you saw it. At any rate, this course explains how to use the FLD and make projections from cycles. It's wonderful. There's also another book that is called Torque Analysis of the Stock Market, which relates the cycles to the motion of let's say an automatic transmission. And that one is much more complicated and much more deep than the cycles course, but you could certainly look that one up as well. And those three give you a really, really firm understanding of how cycles work. Once you have that understanding, the mystery of WD Gann ceases to be such a great mystery. Because what WD Gann is doing is WD Gann is applying these concepts using the Fourier transform, and he is showing how you add these waves together. The unique part about WD Gann, where WD Gann builds upon knowledge that you can learn from J.M. Hurst, is that WD Gann gives you the starting point. So you can find the starting point. And how do we find our starting point? Well, we look at highs and lows. So I showed in the previous video that right here we had Venus on August 5th at 150.64 degrees. So we know that there was an interaction with Venus. But how do you know this? Well, it comes back to a concept that you probably have never considered. Let's switch over to TD Ameritrade because I can't show this as easily in TradingView. But here, let's zoom in. How do you draw a manual trend line that has value? Where are the trend lines? Well, you'd probably draw a trend line like this, right? Well, that's a channel line. That's not a trend line. How do you draw a trend line? Well, a trend line is drawn at the wicks. What you really want is the trend. Now, you could draw a channel and discover the trend. And I drew a channel here. I knew this channel on this date. When we came to 8.5, I knew this channel. And this channel, as of today's current date, which is 9/16, where you see we are, according to TD Ameritrade's data, we are above the channel, just as an FYI. But this channel had a bottom, and a top. So when I drew this channel, let's go back here. Let's just assume that I don't know that this is here, and let's assume that we don't know any of that. How did I want to draw this channel? So I started a channel from the bottom, and I brought it up to the top. Now I extend this channel over while following these rules. I extend this channel over and it will give me future hits. Now what did you learn from this? What you learned is the wicks have value. Yes, the bars have value too, but the wicks have value. So if I want another channel here, I'll take one from here and I'll take it to here, and now I've got another channel. So is it fair to say that this is a cycle of the planets and this is a cycle of the planets? Absolutely. Here is WD Gann cycles applied in a way that your mind is not thinking of it. If you just think of WD Gann as this is a cycle and it goes from here to here, that's too limited. You're over in the corner of the room staring at the corner. The cycles are the channels. The cycles are also those circular bubbles, but the cycles are also the Gann fan. When I show in my videos the Gann fan using these relationships, here is a touch to a wick, which means that all of these other lines will have mathematical harmonic relationships to the first motion. That allows you to find the concepts of the cycles. Now, is this an actual 45 degree on the chart line? I don't care, because it's not relevant. Because as the stock moves, this is the first cycle. I will move it to the next line, and now we have another cycle, and now we have another cycle. So I am moving this because in real time we are doing things with this relationship. So which cycle are we on? Which cycle are we using? The Tokyo J1? Are we using the Radium Ray? Are we using the Demon of Death? Are we using the Tel Talk? Which cycle are we using? I don't care. It doesn't matter what the names are, because you are looking for the part that you need. But how do you go further with this? Well, we see this channel here, and you wonder, how could I add some additional detail to this? Well, if I know how to draw a trend line, and I'm going to show you how, you saw here at the ends of the wick. Let's zoom in a little bit and see if we can't draw a manual line, and this would be very valuable if you're day trading, and I'm not, but if you are, that's great. Do you see the progression of all of these? Well, what is a normal trading rule that we would use? Well, let's just start here. Let's just pick a point. Let's start here and say we're going to cut through the middle and then we're going to do something with it. Well, I drew this manually. Now, yeah, we know that there's a channel here, but I drew this manually. And what did I draw with it? I said I want it to hit the maximum number of wicks, because the more times that the wicks hit the line, the stronger the line's harmonic will be if I extrapolate it. So you see here, this was bullish because when it came down here at the, it just interpret just this candle where the mouse is. If it came down to the line at the low of the wick and it rose up, you know that on this day a dot here is true because it couldn't reach this line. So when it came to the line, it couldn't reach it and it moved up. So you know trading logic is correct. Let's go to the next day. If it was above the line at some point and fell below it, let's say it started here at the open on this day, it rose back up. Let's put this in the middle so that you can see a little bit better. It started here at the open, it broke above the trend line, and then it failed. So when it failed, you knew that this trend line was a valid explanation. What happened on the next day? Well, it couldn't get to the trend line, so it closed down. What happened on the third day? It tried the trend line, it failed, and it came down. It started here and it couldn't get to the trend line. It got to the trend line and came down, so it failed again. Then it tried, okay, we'll try another time to get above this trend line. Did we get above the trend line? No. But on the next day, we power above the trend line, and now we have a bullish action, which you didn't see this trend line initially, although I am now making, in a manual way, the Andrews Pitchfork. And the Andrews Pitchfork is WD Gann's tunnel through the air. So if you are using this, although it's not aligned to the air signs, but it doesn't matter whether you align it to the air signs or not. You just need to know how to use the Andrews Pitchfork. It had to come back to this middle line. And when it came back to this middle line, this is your point from which you either go bearish if you believe it's breaking down, or you go bullish if you see it breaking up. So we interpret this candle. Well, let's look at the next candle. We're here. We go to the next candle. We come down. The bottom of this did not get to the line, and it went up. Well, that's bullish. So we're probably going up to here. There is a concept that things have to go to the individual lines, and there is a scientific reason, which is because the orbital, or the valence rings, the electrons in an atom, they do not exist in the middle. They need to go to the next place. And I've told you that for the law of vibration, you don't get that from learning the planets. At least any way that I've seen it, you get it from learning science and chemistry and other things. Engineering and mathematics and all the rest. So the deepest knowledge is not in the planets, from what I can tell, but the second deepest knowledge is in the planets. And it's really good knowledge. You can do really well just learning that. But it's not the deepest knowledge. So when you are driving a car, let's assume this is two lanes. You either drive in this lane or you drive in this lane. You don't want to drive in the middle lane, so you have to make a decision. You're just waiting for that decision. But you see, there were other decisions that could be made. I could draw an additional line here because I have a wick. I don't have a very strong line here. But you see, I have some line. Let's zoom this back in. I don't have a very strong line here. But you can see that I do have a line. It is respected here and here. It's not a very strong one. What was strong about this is multiple hits. Many, many hits. And you don't have to take this in just one direction. You could take this from other places. Let's say that we go here. Now we're cutting through this line. Do you see? You now have trading points cutting through this line. Do you have a cycle here? Yes, you do. You have a WD Gann cycle. Which one is it? I don't know. And I don't care to know what the name is. It's not relevant. It's just the concept that you have timing and you have a cycle. When will it end? You're looking for what the price will do when it gets to the line. Now, we can calculate, and I show in other videos, there's other ways to look at this. You can calculate the numbers, you can calculate the dates, and again, there's so many ways we can go to this to add layers of layers of layers upon layers. But just from simple looking at the lines and considering these as representative of a time and price cycle, this is not necessarily time and price, but this line is a component. It has time and it has a movement of price. So you see time and price is expressed in here, and from this original point, this would be a Gann fan line. Okay? Now I don't know that the Gann fan would perfectly match up to it, but it might. You never know. Let's go to the maximum extent. It does not match. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Does not quite match there, but you can see that at the end of that cycle, we have an approximate line. And if I had simply moved this line up a little bit, we would have had the same information. But just drawing it manually without drawing a Gann fan, you can see that as it touches here, it's bullish. Why do you value this line? Because it hit all of these wicks, and the wicks are examples of trend lines. But the more wicks, the more you can think that a planet is passing through here. The planets are passing through. These are planetary harmonics. So let's move back here and look at this in some other ways. The nominal model is so many days, and it's not the way that WD Gann deconstructed this in using the planets. J.M. Hurst used a computer to break using a periodogram, which is a measurement of how high each wave is in price action. The periodogram is basically using the Fourier transform to get how high each wave is going to be and which waves are dominant in the cycle that you're looking at. So what we do is, if we come back over here to TD Ameritrade's Thinkorswim, when you study J.M. Hurst, you will get projections, and those projections can be used with a future line of demarcation. And this is something that WD Gann is referencing and alluding to, but he's not directly showing. If I take off, let's just not show the 13 for the moment, and of course TD Ameritrade is a little touchy. This software is not as user-friendly. Oh, come back. So, this is the future line of demarcation. This is a reference in the future of what a cycle may look like, and the response to the cycle. Because once you have a cycle, which we picked from the bottom, and I'm going to show you this in degrees as well, once you have a cycle from the bottom, shifting it forward in time, this has been shifted forward in time by 7 days, or by 7 candles. The reason it's 7 candles is because the J.M. Hurst nominal model is, as I said in the previous video, a 20-day trading is 17 days. Half of that produces a future line of demarcation, and 8.5, I'm taking 1.5 days out because this does not show weekends, and there are weekend days, and they count. The weekends do count in your calculation, even if you don't have them on your chart, and I don't have them on my charts. So I'm taking it out and adjusting. Well, we saw a break here, and we knew when a break happened here, we had a target. And that target was higher. The target for this is whatever the line break is. So let's just say that it's there. So you generate a target up here. Okay? So we're looking at a target of around the top in this calculation. But there are other lines as well, because if we come back, and then TD Ameritrade loses its viewpoint again, because it always does. If we come back and we zoom in on this chaos, the green line right here that generated our upside target was the 20-day, which I ended up having as 7. But you see the yellow line. The yellow line is actually our 40-day cycle, and the 40-day cycle has also produced a target. The target is from the low to the point where it broke, and let's say it broke here. So now I move this line, and I'm going to zoom out so you can see it better. The line for the 40-day cycle goes up here. This concept, it doesn't matter what the cycle is. If you need 18 days, you use 18 days. If you need 22 days, you use 22 days. If you need 12 minutes, use 12 minutes. If you're going to use Mercury, and Mercury's 89, 88 days, whatever it is, that's fine, but you just need to know that it works for your trading. So you pick something based upon the lows or the highs. And by picking from the lows and the highs, you get information about the harmonic relationship of the price action from where it started, where it was powered again. See, this is, if you think of this in the cycle, let's go back to another view here. Let's see where the emblem is. This, because I ate the pizza. I mean, the pizza's gone. I have a picture of the pizza, but I ate the pizza, so we have to use a Gann emblem now. But if this is, let's say this is the Tell Talk cycle. It goes from 0 to 25 to 33 to 50 to 66 to 75 and back to 100. That's your whole cycle. On the chart, when it hits the 25 point or the square, it's probably going to find resistance. So if I transpose this understanding over to here, and I don't know which one it is, but I can look. If I transpose this understanding, this in one of the cycles, if it's a tiny cycle, let's just say it's this small cycle, start here to here. TD Ameritrade also will not do the cycle very well. So let's put it, let's just say it's over here. I'm going to make this, I'm just making this up. But you get the idea. Here, if I can get this. Alright, let's just say that this is a quarter of the cycle. Up, let's say it, now let's actually use up here. I'm going to delete that because it displays even worse than I thought it would. So we will move forward. Let's just say that the cycle is from here to here. And let's say that the quarter of the cycle is from here to here. Right? That gives you an idea that the next quarter should be from here to here. The next quarter should be from here to here. And I'm drawing it poorly. And the next quarter should be from here to here. So you get a action, 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 action. So if you decide to look at Astrolog, and you say, what was this date? Well, this date was August the 5th. Let's go back. What happened on August the 5th? Well, Venus was at 150 degrees. The price was holding above Venus at 150 degrees. And I showed this on the TD Ameritrade, or not TD Ameritrade, the Trading View in the previous video. Venus on August 5th was 150.64 degrees. The market was holding above it, so the Venus cycle was providing support. I added a line today, because here's the 16th of September. Venus is still providing support. So you could say that the Venus cycle, wherever it is, it's still supporting the price. And I am progressing Venus like it's a trend line, but a trend line is time and price, so it's a cycle. These Gann fans that I talk about using, these, I move them because they are cycles. So the basic understanding here is that you have to expand your belief in what a cycle is. A cycle is not just a circle. A cycle is not just the movement of price from one point to the next. You have to say a cycle is something that is giving you points of resistance. We could use the square of 9 or the circle of 12 as I used in the previous video. You can use that to find breakpoints in the cycle that give you an idea of what should the market be doing. And you can then project that using the J.M. Hurst concepts, which I would encourage you to learn because they are very, very practical, especially if you are trying to struggle through WD Gann. But remember that WD Gann is not telling you the best parts. He's giving you the straw. And from the straw, he's giving you the last part of the process. He's not telling you that there was a farm or there was a lawn that was really overgrown if it was a lawn. Let's say there was a field on a farm that a farmer was producing things, and he's growing hay, and the hay is cut, and there's a machine that cuts the hay, and then at the very end you get this straw, and the straw is what you're looking at. So don't get too bound up in the concepts of the tunnel through the air, because they are the smallest picture of what it is that you need. And let me see if I had the rest of the comments here. I did look at this. I'm not going to include this on the channel, this comment, because of the link. The link is just going down a path that is a lot more time at the lowest level, and I couldn't read all of it. I had on the video about 9/11, I had a gentleman who made a comment. I did not approve the comment because it was, I could not verify what I was sending the person to, because it was like, he said there's 7 volumes of data, and read the 7 volumes of data. I don't have time to read the 7 volumes of data, and I'm not going to encourage everyone else to read the 7 volumes of data if it is bad data, because we can really waste our time here. I want to comment also here on this declination. I did say that if the planets come back to their conjunction and the declination is different of the planets, meaning one is higher and one is lower, they do get lower energy, and that has less of an effect. But what I want to tell you about this is that declination is not a very useful place to go to in the way I was describing it. You're just going to get the same results using longitude. That it has been tried, it does correlate, but it is not the entirety. It is not the big picture, and we're not looking for the straw. We're looking for the best things. Try to keep in mind that WD Gann was using the fastest concepts possible. He was teaching the slowest concepts, but he himself used the best ones himself. So if you follow what Gann is teaching, you're getting the slowest and worst concepts, but he's using the best. You have to go backwards from the worst to the best. But what you really want is the best. The best is the usage of the Gann fan and moving it. The best is the law of vibration, which that is the absolute best, is the law of vibration. It's going to tell you the up and the down. But stepping back from that, the second best is the planets. This represents the planetary cycles in graphical form. So using the Gann fans help you spot the cycles, because a cycle is over when it breaks one of these lines. If you were to calculate time squares using the planets or a cycle of the planets, they would line up to these lines. You would get these lines by doing it manually. So I hope this gives a little bit more understanding of how you use this. You pick tops and bottoms, and if you want to use the planets, you pick a progression of a planet in longitude from that starting point. So let's say August 5th was this date, and you watch what was going on. Well, we had Jupiter and Mars, and we had Venus and Mercury. So what you will do is you will progress them through 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees from this starting point. This is the starting point. And you go 60 degrees into the future, which is coming up close. Let's say Venus is, just using Venus, if we use Venus and we call it the Saint Marie, Venus is 150. So let's see when it gets to 210. It gets to 210 on September 23rd. So if you're following just the Venus cycle, and then it comes into conjunction with the Sun. If you're following just the Venus cycle, 60 degrees, which if we go back to the Gann emblem, 60 degrees would be half of 120, which means that it's about half of the 33. So it's going to be right here. This would be about 60 degrees. And you would be at this point in the cycle. If you progress to the square, you would be at 25%. So when you are about 60 degrees in the circle, you're right here, and this may be a bullish point on the Venus cycle only. When you get halfway, it may be a bearish point on the Venus cycle only. And that's okay, because if you are trading on that time frame or smaller, Venus becomes valuable. If you're trading on a larger time frame, or you have a larger planet rather that comes in and breaks that time frame, then it's going to break your trend. But the Venus cycle will still work. If another planet comes in and breaks your cycle, how do you respond to that? Well, that's where capital management comes in, because if you're trading a Venus cycle and it gets interrupted by something big, let's look over here at the chart. Let's just say, let me switch to something that hopefully is clean. No, that one's different. Let's change to this. This one's relatively clean. Let's just say that this is Venus, because we know it is, and we know Venus is also right here. But let's say that you're trading a Venus cycle out till the 23rd. So I'll draw it here from this date till the 23rd. Why did you pick that? Because you picked 60 degrees of astrolog from Venus. I have to go back to it. You picked 60 degrees from August 5th, where it was 150, and you move from August 5th to September 23rd, and then it's 210. So you did 60 degrees, which on the Gann emblem would be a portion of the cycle, or half would be right here. And so maybe you want this portion of the cycle, and you think something will happen here. I'm not saying I do. Honestly, I usually want the larger cycles. I want them to go to conjunctions and oppositions. I don't really want the small cycles, but for example purposes, this should be good enough. So let's say this is the cycle of Venus. Well, if this is Venus, and let's say here, I'm just making this up, the moon comes in, and we don't need to know that the moon comes in and breaks it, although you could look at the moon and see the moon's going to break the cycle. So the moon pushes the cycle to stop it from going up, it pushes it down. And you had Mercury come in, and Mercury also pushed it down. So now you've lost if you were starting back here, but you should have been starting here. This is where you started. Have you ever seen a roller coaster? If you look at a roller coaster, oftentimes you have to stand in a line next to the roller coaster. I was just at an amusement park here yesterday, and I did this strange thing. It was really strange. I waited in the line for the roller coaster. I didn't stand here and say, oh, you know what? We're on this hill. I'm going to dive over the fence and see if I can hop into the roller coaster while it's moving. No, I waited for the roller coaster to come back to the starting point, and then I got on the coaster and I rode the coaster from that point. So the best cycles are actually the ones that you start from the conjunction. And so if you start Venus from 0 degrees, or if you go 360 degrees from wherever it was, meaning this cycle of Venus, if it started at 150, run the whole cycle again to 360 and see what the points are. And you can do this with past data. I'm just giving you an idea here. What you would do if you are running it just from here to here, saying I want to go 60 degrees of Venus, and that's going to be a trine, and maybe I'll get action from that trine, or that part of the trine. And you may get some action from the part of the trine. But when you get under pressure here, in my theoretical, the moon pushed against it and Mercury pushed against it, and then Venus went back up and it kept going, that's where you would have cash management if you were here, saying, okay, well, I'm on a Venus cycle. Well, you should have started down here on the Venus cycle, maybe on this day, a couple days after the Venus cycle started, 2, 3, 4 days. Once you have an idea where it was, if you believe through other data that this was the bottom, you start here, and then you ride the cycle until the cycle decelerates, which it's decelerating right here. And then you say, okay, well, something else is affecting the cycle, or maybe the cycle is ending. It's not necessarily ending, but maybe something else was affecting the cycle. Because if this is 60 degrees, this was probably 45. So this was probably Venus 45. I don't know exactly, but let's say Friday, the 6th of September. Let's go back to Astrolog. Let's go to the 6th of September and do some simple math here. Venus was, so we were 150, so this is 40 degrees. What is 45? 45 degrees is September the 10th. So what's September the 10th? 11th would be the actual 45. Well, the actual 45, here was the bottom of 45 degrees Venus. Do you see where this is going? So here's your 45, and here's your 60. So this is we're coming down for some reason. I don't know what the reason is at the moment. Planetary coincidence, or we're coming into the 45 Venus. Here is your bottom on Venus 45, just using this concept. This was the bottom. I progressed it 60 degrees to this date. Here was the next low. This would be a sign, buy back in, it's going bullish some, if you're trading on the Venus cycle. And if you are wrong, because let's say Uranus comes in and just drives this thing down into the ground, what you should have had is cash. Because you have to assume that if you are on a Venus cycle, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto could all smash your cycle to bits. So you need more cash if you trade the smaller cycle here. If you're trading monstrous cycles like Uranus or Saturn, most likely a big planet, let's say you traded Jupiter and Saturn, and I could show this in another video, I'm not going to show it here, but if you trade Jupiter and Saturn, it's going to take Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto to smash that cycle, most likely. I mean, you could have just like this, assume this is Venus, assume the moon made it go flat and Mercury brought it down, and Venus picked back up again here at the 45, and now you go bullish. So that's the understanding of how this actually gets applied. But again, understand that there are so many more useful levels of this, and I would refer you back again to the J.M. Hurst concepts. This is the way of using it WD Gann style, but his way is, just showing it one final time, his way is just the straw. So don't spend all your time worrying about the theory, I think I lost where I was, the theory of what Gann is teaching, because he's teaching you the smallest bits and baubles. You need to take it and put it into the market like I'm demonstrating here, because you will find more ways, new ways, and there will be ways that don't work for me mentally, but they work for you. And I am always looking for what's the fastest, quickest, most effective way. I want to replace my current methods with something faster. I don't want to use them all. I want the faster, quicker, better methods. And you can see how this hit. Just looking at Astrolog, we hit here on the 11th because we cross into 195 on the 11th. We go from 194 on September 10th, September 11th crosses into 195, and so we're basically one of these points, and both of these are great points to buy at. If you had bought at either of these points because you said, oh, that's Venus 45 right here, both of those were good buy points. So you can see how the concepts actually work. When you are using the cycles, you don't want to start from the smallest cycle. So it doesn't matter whether it's Tel Talk, or it doesn't matter whether it's Radium Ray, it doesn't matter whether it's the Demon of Death, whatever it is, you want to look at the cycles, if this is a trend line, first have a Saturn trend, where it's going 1 point per month, because Saturn is a really big planet. 1 point per month, let's just go 30 days, it's not going to be exact, but it's approximate, because Saturn can go really fast and really slow, especially when it comes out of retrograde. But here, we're at 342 on October 30th. Let's go back to September 30th and see what we're at. we were at the end, so we actually moved about 1.4 points, because it was 142.9 something, I think. So you're like 1.4 points, 1.4 degrees. So Saturn is moving slow. So if you find that it's holding above a Saturn trend line, you're in great shape. As long as it stays above that, the Saturn cycle is still progressing. If you're using a Venus trend line, well, it's not going to be as long. It's going to move faster. So you can pick the cycles that you need, but it's actually a better idea to pick, if you're going to build them like WD Gann did, you're going to build them from the longer cycles to the shorter cycles. And that is what the nominal model is explaining. Because the larger cycles are the ones that are going to interrupt the smaller cycles at a point that you may not be aware of. And because you're adding these cycles together. So you're adding together the ascendant, and you're adding together the moon, and you're adding together the Venus, and you're adding together Jupiter, and you're adding together Saturn, and Uranus comes through and it just wipes it all out. Because you didn't look at Uranus, and it's a bigger cycle that is going to take effect for a certain duration of time. So you need larger cycles if you want to trade it that way. I prefer to trade it with a composite. And the composite is using the Gann fan, using the channels, and using lines that touch these individual points here. And yes, timing does go into my law of vibration, and yes, the planets can be used for timing changes. What was explained in the video that Alex was looking at here is that he was using the specific planets to judge when that planet would change. The reason that it's got 80% accuracy or whatever it is because yes, the planets do work. If you know when the planet changes directions because the cycle is over, and you can just look on astrolog and see, you find it from the bottom point and you progress at 360 degrees. You say, well, what degree did I start at? Well, the degree I started at was Venus here was 150 degrees. So I'm moving Venus 360 degrees from this, and that will be the end of a Venus cycle. So I'm starting here. I found a point where it respected the price. That's Venus at 150 degrees. And I'm moving Venus 360 degrees in the future using the logic of the Gann emblem, that at these breakpoints we will get a turn at these breakpoints. That's the essence of WD Gann and what he's doing. That's how you apply it. You find an active line, which is a wick, or as I drew it, the wicks are telling you there's an accurate line. You could progress a Venus cycle from, or whatever is here. Let's say Jupiter's here. You might progress Jupiter from here to somewhere else. And you might progress Saturn from, let's say Saturn's over here. You might progress Saturn out into the future. So you pick where you are and you find the planet that is nearest this price that has relevance and is active. It's active because the wick goes through or touches or stops at the line. And you use that harmonic. But the easier way to do it is to use the Gann fan, because here I am getting planetary data, but I don't care what planet it is. I don't care whether it's Tel Talk. I don't care whether it's the Saint Marie. I don't care whether it's Mars, the angle of Mercury. It doesn't matter to me because I'm getting the harmonic data in the Gann fan, and he was using the Gann fan because it saves you tremendous time. There's a lot more to be said about this, but I'm going to leave that here for this video, and hope that gives you some additional ideas for how you trade with this. But again, look into J.M. Hurst, because until you understand how the cycles are used, knowing where they start and stop is less valuable. And the J.M. Hurst concepts are tremendously practical. So best wishes in your trading, and I hope to be back to you in another video.